Hi all, this is Skate, and today we are going to have a look at the oh so controversial topic of the equipment changes. Now, by the time this video is released, there's a good possibility you have seen all of this new equipment already. But for those who haven't, I want to run through and show you every single new bit of equipment you may be able to get. So the plan is, we'll go through all of the new 18 bits of equipment. Once we've done that, we will have a look at how you obtain this equipment, because Wargame's original plan was to just do it via missions, which was just stupid. However, they have heard our cries on the forum and they have made alterations, so we will run through that towards the end of the video as well. There are a couple of things I need to point out before we start here. The first thing being, how can I put it? I friggin' hate some of the things they have done in here. But I also like some of the things they have done. The equipment overall is actually pretty good. Some of it's going to make your tank OP. And it's really weird. The new equipment is weird, but I quite like it, especially if you can get all 9 unlocked and on your tank. It will really make a difference to your tank. But my other concern is, say for example we have 2 people with IS-7s. One person has all 9 bits of equipment, or has picked 9 bits of equipment to go on their tank. The difference between that and someone who has just unlocked their IS-7 and has only the top level of equipment unlocked, the difference is going to be night and day. And the difference in that circumstance is going to be staggering. I could well be wrong there. But from what I have seen of these, with all of them on compared to someone who has 1, 2 or 3 of them on, it really will make a substantial difference. So I'm worried how that would play out in the game. And then the other thing they've added, well, I'll run through that afterwards. It's just a bad move. It really is a bad move. They've basically made a new system, which I think it's actually pretty good with concerns. Then, rather than polish it off, they've added a twist which just irritates me. But we'll go through that after we've had a look at the new equipment. Now, the first thing you can see there is we have our faithful gun rammer, except it's been nerfed. It now only provides 7% to your reload time. So it's only a 3% nerf, but it is a nerf nonetheless. Now, in this first category, you have a choice of the gun rammer, or your second option is to fit those 3 shells next to it. That, my friends, is a calibrated shells. It provides 5% extra penetration with any type of shell. Now obviously the higher your penetration figures on your tank, i.e. your tier 10 tanks, your tier 10 tank destroyers, the higher the gain you will get from this. In terms of the grill, you're getting an extra 14mm of penetration on your AP, an extra 17mm of penetration on your high explosive anti-tank, and an extra 4mm on your HE. Then the next category, if I stop skipping, is protected modules. This provides 10% protection to the engine, transmission and ammo rack, plus 10% to suspension and fuel tank durability. Basically, it's exactly the same thing you would get in your provisions. It's pretty much the same as your protective kit. And then next to it we have an enhanced cabin, which provides 10% to crew protection and 10% to damage from ramming. Out of the two, I would personally go with the protected modules and stack it with the provision protected kit. Because those two stacked together, you're getting a lot of protection there. Now this is one part I don't like, the specialization. You've got a choice of improved optics or a camo net. Now the improved optics obviously provide you 10% view range. The camo net has been adjusted slightly. It's minus 7% visibility during vehicle movement, and then the bonus is doubled to 15 once you've remained stationary for 3 seconds. I don't like that myself, because tanks like the Dicamax and the Steramil rely on being hidden with good view range. So I feel lumping these two together has pretty much going to cripple a lot of tanks that have no armor and do rely on that view range and being sneaky to sit at the back of the map and snipe for the first half of the battle. Now that top row, which we'll just call tier 1, is unlocked with credits. This one is unlocked with spare parts. And the first thing we come across is our gun lane drive, which, quite simply, still adds 10% to the aiming speed. It's nothing has changed in terms of the enhanced gun lane drive. It is exactly the same. It's just obviously in a category with something else. And again, you can only choose one of these two extra bits of equipment to fit. And the other option is supercharged. 10% to shell velocity and minus 33% to penetration decrease with distance. So referring back to the previous section, where we pretty much nerfed tanks which like to play long range, this one is a big gain, because you gain that velocity to hit moving targets, and shooting at range you lose way less penetration, which means your shots are more than likely to hit, and when they do hit, they're more than likely to penetrate. So for tanks that do want to play long range and sneaky, this is a very, very viable option. The problem you do have is it's that or a gun lane drive, so this is also going to be a very good option for medium tanks as well. Now this next category I think is slightly controversial. Enhanced armor. 5% extra hull and turret armor. What? 5% extra hull and turret armor. Yeah. I'm not sure how I feel about this one. Anything with very, very thick armor with this on, obviously is going to have a higher gain. Oh, I don't know. Let's just pick something like a T95. Now, 5% doesn't seem like an awful lot, but you have to remember penetration values are balanced with armor on tanks. So you may just have a couple of mil not enough to penetrate. By giving 5% like this, it's going to make a difference. I can guarantee that, and it's going to make quite a difference. And only as another example, but let's nerf the penetration values and the armor on a T62, and then 2 updates later we're going to give you enough equipment to pretty much get it back to the hull armor it was, and we're going to give you some of your penetration values back. If you think about that, that's actually really funny, because we're going to take some armor off you, and we're going to take some penetration off you to balance medium tanks, and then a couple of updates later we're going to give it all back to you. We're just going to make you work for it. So yeah, as I mentioned, I honestly don't know how I feel about that one. It's a funny one, and I'm just going to wait to see how that plays out on the live server. Now again, as with every other category, you have a choice of that, or you have a choice of improved assembly. So where with the grill, you're not really going to gain from 5% hull and turret armor. Improved assembly will provide 5% to the vehicle hit points, so it gives you an extra 90 hit points in this example. It may not seem like a vast amount, but when you think how often you leave a tank on less than 100 health, it's going to happen a lot more. Now for tanks which are very mobile, this is going to be a huge gain. Improved control. It provides 7% to the top traverse speed of the vehicle. So something like an LTTB, which has outrageously fast traverse speed, is about to get even faster. Things like any light tank pretty much is going to have a huge gain from this. And I know some people are thinking, great, T95 doesn't traverse very quickly, an extra 7% will help. Well, you've got to bear in mind, or the way I'm looking at it, is anything which already has very high figures, that 7% is going to provide even more of a gain. So I'd be fitting this on my light tanks just to make them that little bit more mobile. Now the other option, instead of improved control, which provides that 7%, would be engine accelerator. This provides 7% to the top speed of a vehicle. In terms of the grill, now this is something very important as well. It provides it to the engine, so the extra power to the engine doesn't just affect the top speed. You can see there, it will also impact the traverse speed. Not by a lot, but it does impact it. So in this example, if you use improved control, you get an extra 2.29 degrees of traverse speed. When you use the engine accelerator, it gains you an extra 0.95 traverse speed, and you get on top of that the 7% top speed. I can see the engine accelerator being the much more common choice here. Now, moving on to tier 3, we have our trusty old vertical stabilizer, except this has been nerfed slightly. It now provides 15% to accuracy during movement and turret traverse. It used to provide 20%. So a vertical stabilizer alone won't provide you as much gain as it used to, but when you combine it with those other 6 bits of equipment you can fit already, you're going to be seeing big differences to your tank. But again, you have another alternative to the vertical stabilizer. The other alternative is going to be a refined gun. This provides minus 5% to dispersion at 100 meters. Minus 5% doesn't sound like a big deal. Tanks with very accurate guns are not going to have much gain from this, as you can see from the Grill's figures by there. You're only gaining 0.015. But you add one of these to, ooh, I don't know, a KV2. The figure's going to be substantially more. So this option I think is actually very good, because it gives you a good option between the two style of tanks. You can either have something very inaccurate, then a refined gun is very good. Or you can have something which you're shooting a lot on the move, you go with your trusty old vertical stabilizers. Now this next one I do think is going to be a controversial one as well. Automatic repair of suspension from a critical condition to a standard condition. Now the way I have interpreted that is critical is when your track is damaged and off. If I'm reading this correctly and interpreting this correctly, this will automatically repair your track so you don't get tracked. Now if I have interpreted this incorrectly, I apologize in advance. But what the hell sort of bit of equipment is that? Tanks which rely on their high rate of fire to permatrack things are going to be screwed. A perfect example is going to be the E25. It relies on being at long range, being able to permatrack a target so it can just chip slowly away at it. If I'm interpreting this correctly, automatically repair suspension from a critical condition. So when your suspension is knackered, it's automatically going to change it back to standard condition. To me, that is a big deal, and that is a very powerful bit of equipment. And I don't like it as a result, because the only other option there is 25% to repair speed. Why in God's name are you going to pick that over the other option? Now, again, using my E25 as an example, if you're firing at something with big tracks, it's going to take one shot to damage the tracks and then one shot to take the tracks off. Granted, that's not always the case, but things with below average penetration values don't always take tracks off straight away. So if you're shooting at someone's track, you damage it, it's automatically repaired. How are you going to track it? I don't like that bit of equipment. I really don't. It's going to be too powerful. And especially when you're comparing it to 25% repair speed. Now the last category, consumable delivery system. 10% to consumable cooldown speed. Again, a rather powerful one, because anyone who has this fitted is going to be getting their adrenaline to reload quicker, a lot quicker than the person without it. So it is a very powerful bit of equipment. Couple that with a booster which provides the same sort of cooldown speed, because they are obviously stackable because they're different, you're again obtaining serious gains, because you can have a booster which provides this and you can have this consumable delivery system at the same time. So you can now see the picture I was painting earlier when I explained that when you're stacking all these bits of equipment on top of each other, it's going to make a significant difference to a tank which has them all, with boosters and provisions, to a tank which doesn't. Obviously I'm not a developer, but if it was me, I just would have added all this equipment as extra options to choose from. It provides much more varied gameplay and many more varied options without stacking them to a point where they are completely crazy. So with that in mind, that's what I would have done anyway, because you have so many different options there, and they are good bits of equipment. The vast majority of these are very good, and they're good ideas. Granted, I think a couple are just ridiculous, but the vast majority of them are very good. If they added all of these to the existing setup which was there, it gives you much more varied choice. Because let's be fair, the vast majority of us always went for the same setups, on our medium tanks, then on our tank destroyers, and then on our heavy tanks. These all thrown in as extra different equipment options would have made one hell of a difference to the way we all play it. We would have had more options to choose from, there would have been more diversity between the tanks, but not to the extent where these extra 9 bits of equipment stacked with provisions and with boosters are going to have that much of a considerable effect on a tank with and a tank without it. I am just expressing my opinion here, by the way, which is actually irrelevant anyway, because this is already in place. But it's my video. I still wanted to share my opinion nonetheless. Anyway, the very last option to choose from would be high-end consumables. 15% to the duration of consumables, which is engine, power boost, and adrenaline. What are they? 15 seconds, so you are 2.25 extra seconds on each one. So the actual adrenaline then would last 17.25 seconds instead of 15. Out of a choice of these two, I would always go with the first option, the cooldown speed, because that takes 10% off 75 seconds, which is an extra 7.5 seconds off, which means your consumable time is 67.5 seconds. So you'll get more of a gain from having that quicker cooldown. As I said, especially if you stack it with a booster. So there are the new 18 bits of equipment. Let's have a look at how you get them. So the first 3 tiers are unlocked at tier 10 anyway, 300,000 credits each. They are cheaper to unlock at lower tiers, but I thought if we look at tier 10, we get a good indication of what we're looking at. Now, once you've unlocked the first 3 tiers for 300,000 credits each, you then have to collect spare parts. Now this is the part which caused uproar on the forums. After Wargaming released that video specifying that you get them from missions, obviously the forums went mad. Someone like myself, I work full time, I don't get to see more than 1 mission reset per day. So this was obviously a very, very bad change. However, it's not just from missions now. Now, first off, missions you can get these from. Missions will drop anywhere between 430 and 3,100 spare parts per mission. That is dependent on complexity of mission and the tier you are at. Now, as well as getting them from missions, Wargaming have added them to random battles. Spare parts now have a 50% chance as dropping as a reward from random battles and tournament battles. For a victory, you'll get between 55 to 231 spare parts, and for a loss, you'll get between 28 and 116 spare parts. There is a 50% chance of them dropping, remember? Now, I hated the whole they only drop from missions. However, once they've incorporated this, it's a bit better. Now, compensation. Before we look at the last thing I want to show you, we need to have a look at the compensation side of things. Wargaming will be providing compensation for the equipment we already have fitted to our tanks. In this instance, if we look at tier 10, so we'll use tier 10 as an example. If you got 3 equipment on your tier 10 tank, which cost you 1.2 million credits, or silver, whichever you want to call it, Wargaming will give you 15,000 spare parts for that. And you can calculate this throughout your entire garage then. 1 spare part is basically worth 80 credits. So from that, if you look at your garage, how many different equipment you have on each tank, that's pretty much what it will equate to. On top of that, they will also give you between 28 and 71 spare parts for each battle you have done in your account. Now, myself, I've done 30,000 battles. If we look at the bare absolute minimum, which I won't have because the majority of mine are actually high tier, but for myself, if we just looked at the lower figure, which is the 28, times it by 30,000 battles, you're looking 840,000 credits. Nope, sorry, 840,000 spare parts. That would be the bare minimum I would get. The reality is it's probably going to be double that, so I'm going to have a huge amount of spare parts to allow me to fit equipment. Here's the part I hate. Once you click that open button, there's a cooldown timer, and you can skip it for gold. I've just opened this for 300,000 credits, and I need to wait 24 hours if I want that equipment on my tank, or I can accelerate it for 250 gold. That will then be the same if I did the same as Vitality. If I go to that and then I click open, 1 day again. So I'm going to skip it for 250 gold. And it'll be the same with the specialization. So that's 3 days if you don't want to spend the gold just to get all that equipment fitted. And then the next tier, it takes longer. I can't unlock it here, but I can confirm if you look, this one at tier 10 is going to cost you 29,000 spare parts. And the cooldown timer is 3 days. The cooldown timer for that level 3 or tier 3 then is 4 days each. So it's a lot of timers added to these. Just to give you an idea on the opposite end of the spectrum, a tier 1, the level 1 unlock slot is only going to be 5 minutes when you're down at tier 1. These 24-hour time slots come in at tier 6. I understand Wargaming may want to trial these timers. Really though, doing it on the equipment, the most controversial change they have made to the game, and they add timers to this. They could have added timers to modules. Once you click to unlock a module, you have to wait 24 hours. I may not have cared as much about that, because I would have gone, fair enough. Some people are going to want to skip it. I personally wouldn't care. To your equipment though, no, please no. So now you can see why at the start of this video I said I like it, but I don't like it. There's things which really aggravate me about this update, and there's things which it's just weird. I don't know how to feel about it. The reality is his equipment wasn't broken, but it wasn't diverse, and as a result adding new equipment was a very good idea. To completely restructure the equipment, okay, I'm not too keen on the idea, but I'm going to go with it, try it, and I will not quit the game as a result. That's not something to make me go, I give up. In 6 months' time, we may be used to it, we may prefer it, I don't know what's going to happen. I personally think tanks with, again compared to without, is going to be too much of a vast difference, but we will soon see. Adding timers? No, that I don't think is a very good move. And I would say leave your comment below with what you think about this, but I can guarantee when people saw the timers, they paused it and went mad in the comments. I can guarantee it, but I read all the comments, so I'm curious to what you guys think. And I'm imagining Wargaming are going to read the comments, possibly, maybe, I don't know. Maybe someone from Wargaming will read comments in the videos like this. And we know they do sometimes react to our comments based on, well, we don't just get them from the missions now, which is what the biggest outcry was. So I'm curious to what everybody's thoughts are on this. Leave your comments below, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.